Hey y'all, it's Amanda. Welcome back. Today, we're going to do just a more general meta-analysis and talk about the most common sets of the top 5 most popular Pokemon on ladder, as well as some thoughts about how we can beat them, so stick around. So first up is, of course, Flutter Maine. Right now, as I record this, it's got a 67% usage rate on the ladder, which is insane. It's, Incineroar, Zacian levels of usage. If you're not playing around Flutter Maine on your team, if you don't have a plan for how to deal with it, you're probably not going to do too well on the ladder. So the reason it's so popular is because although it has a pretty low HP and defense stats, its special attack and speed stats are incredibly high at 135. Its special defense stat is also high, but that's kind of balanced out by the low HP. So it's still somewhat frail of a Pokemon. And as far as moves go, you're almost always going to see it running things like Shadow Ball, Dazzling Gleam, and Moonblast. And then for that 4 slot, you'll usually either see Protect or Thunderbolt. Sometimes you'll see things like Substitute or Power Gen, and then very rarely you'll see much more strange, odd moves like Icy Wind, Hex, Psyshock, even Trick Room sometimes. So while there's a lot of things that Flutter Maine could do when you see it on the ladder, most of the time, it's just gonna run with that huge offensive power and start using things like Shadow Ball, Dazzling Gleam, and Moonblast. Of course, the ability is always gonna be Photosynthesis. That means that in the sun, it'll get a boost to its highest stat. In the past, this has usually been speed, but right now, it's more common to see modest nature Flutter Maines, which means that the stat that will be boosted is their special attack usually. And then for items, you'll see them running booster energy a lot of the time so that they don't have to worry about being in the sun to get that photosynthesis boost. You'll also see choice specs, which gives, a little bit higher of a boost than the booster energy would. You will also sometimes still see that max speed, max special attack focus sash set, but it's a lot less common now than it has been in the past. And so as far as like EVs and like stat spreads go, again, you'll still sometimes see that sort of glass cannon build with the max speed, max special attack, either timid or modest, but you're a lot more likely now to see still high special attack, a modest build, but you're gonna see a lot more slower, less than 252 speed EVs, and a lot higher defense stats. Remember that Flutter Maine doesn't have access to a priority move, so it's incredibly vulnerable, even though it's very fast. It's incredibly vulnerable to priority moves. Now, Sucker Punch could be a problem, but if you Terra Fairy, then you'll resist Sucker Punch, and it's a little bit less of an issue. But Jet Punch from Palafin in particular is a big problem for Flutter Maine. So the flip side of that, of course, is that Palafin is still the best way to deal with Flutter Maine. That priority Jet Punch packs a hit, and if you're Terra Water Palafin holding a Mystic Water, even if that Flutter Maine is 252 defense, you still have a 50% chance to OHKO a Flutter Maine with your Jet Punch. So Flutter Maine has bulked up to help deal with some priority attacks and the large numbers of physical attackers that are running around, but it's still very vulnerable to Jet Punch. So I would still say Palafin is your best bet to deal with Flutter Maine if you are worried about, let's say, Thunderbolt. And next up on our list is, of course, Amungus, always the biggest troublemaker in every format that it is a part of. What can I say about Amungus that we don't already know? Its ability is fantastic. Regenerator means that when it switches out and then back onto the field, it will regain HP, which is critical. I mean, the absolute basis of a Pokemon match is to have more HP than your opponent, right? Take more of your opponent's HP than they take of yours. So the ability to regenerate and gain that HP back can be really critical, especially because Amungus is a fantastic disruptor Pokemon. What Amungus wants to do is stop your opponent from doing what they want to do. And the longer it can stay on the field, the more it can achieve that. So, of course, the most common moves you're going to see on Amungus are things like Spore, Rage Powder, Pollen Puff. Spore, of course, puts the opponent to sleep. It does not miss. It has 100% accuracy. Rage Powder works like Follow Me, so it works so that your opponent will have to attack the Amungus instead of its partner. Another great way to protect Palafin, for example, because Amungus does resist those electric and grass type attacks. that Amungus is weak to. Keep in mind though that Spore and Rage Powder will not work on grass type Pokemon or Pokemon that have Terra'd into the grass type, and it also won't work on Pokemon with the safety goggles item. And then of course Pollen Puff will help either to do damage on the opposing side of the field as just a bug type attack, or if you use Pollen Puff on your partner, it will heal your partner. And again, that ability to regain HP makes Amungus very valuable. Now for the fourth move, usually you'll see Protect, but some players do use Clear Smog instead as a Dondozo counter because Dondozo is still around. It hasn't gone quite all the way away. A lot of people are still using Dondozo with great effect, and Clear Smog will remove all of those commander boosts that Dondozo gains. And then as far as items go, you're usually going to see Citrus Berry, although some Amungus run things like Rocky Helmet to help deal further damage to physical attackers in conjunction with Rage Powder. And you'll very rarely see other things like Mental Herb to clear taunts. Now, EV stat spreads on Amungus are quite interesting. Depending on what role you want your Amungus to do, there are a lot of different spreads you could use. As far as natures go, you're often going to see either a bold or relaxed nature on Amungus. Bold nature increases defense and reduces attack, and relaxed nature increases defense and reduces speed. So again, we're really trying to fortify our Amungus against those physical attacks. And Amungus typically does not use their attack or speed stats, so those are good stats to reduce. The relaxed nature in particular would be good on a Trick Room team because then your Amungus is even slower, meaning it'll move sooner in Trick Room. And then stat spreads, typically Amungus does not really have any special attack investment. Typically what you're going for with an Amungus are you want to boost those bulks. So you've got HP, you've got special defense, and you've got defense, and what your stat spread is going to be reflective of is what in particular you are wanting to live. So if you're wanting to live a particular attack from a particular Pokemon, then you'll adjust your EV stat spread to account for that. Obviously, the best counter to an Amungus is going to be a grass-type Pokemon or a Terra Grass Pokemon. That way you can be not affected by Rage Powder or by Spore, right? So you Terra Grass a Pokemon, and then you can kind of ignore the Amungus as far as your Pokemon is concerned. Once you've Terra Grass, your Amungus isn't going to do much to it. So you could either just ignore the Amungus and face down its partner, right? Just kill its partner and ignore the Amungus. Or if you're worried about pollen puffs from Amungus onto the partner, which, you know, fair, that's a fair thing, especially if Amungus is paired with a very bulky partner that's not going to be easy to kill quickly, then you might have to face down the Amungus and take it down. Arcanine usually does really well into Amungus. That Flare Blitz is no joke. Other things that Amungus is going to be weak to are like flying type attacks, ice type attacks, so Chen Pao could be a really good partner to take down that Amungus as quickly as possible. Third on our list is Tingloo. Now, if you told me that Tingloo would be the most popular Ruin Pokemon at the beginning of this format, I probably would not have believed you. I would have thought it would be either Chiyu or Chen Pao, but believe it or not, Tingloo has a 35% usage rate for right now this month on Showdown. And this is probably because its ability works so well to sort of shut down opposing Flutter Maine, right? Tingloo is a fantastic defense against Flutter Maine because its ability reduces the special attack of all the Pokemon on the field. And if you're not using a special attacker, then that ability doesn't hurt you at all, it just hurts your opponents. So typically Tingloo's gonna use moves like Heavy Slam, Stomping Tantrum, Ruination of course, and then that fourth move is usually gonna be either something like Earthquake, Fissure of course, Rock Slide, or Throat Chop. Now, sometimes you will see variants of Tingloo that do run Protect. Most of the time, Tingloos do not run Protect because they're, you know, assault vested. But sometimes they'll run Protect, and sometimes they'll even run things like Payback, Body Press for opposing Ruin Mons, things like that. So while it's somewhat predictable what Tingloo is going to do, there's a little bit of variation in what that 4th move slot typically is. As I said just a minute ago, most Tingloos are running Assault Vest, so you can pretty safely attack into them knowing that they're not going to protect. But sometimes they're choice banded. Again, still can't protect if they're running choice band, but you'll even see things like Citrus Berry, Leftovers, or even weakness policy variants, which are probably pretty fun to play on the ladder, but probably not quite as good as Assault Vest, which gives Tingloo just like this amazing special bulk in partnership with its ability. And keep in mind, its defense stat is incredibly high. So its defense stat is high, and an Assault Vest plus its ability makes its special bulk much better than its stats would tell you. And it can be so difficult to get Tingloo off the field. So usually you're going to see Tingloo Terra into either water or poison. These are defensive Terra types that are meant to help Tingloo survive hits that would otherwise be super effective against them. Usually you're actually going to see an adamant nature and not necessarily a bulk increasing nature. Although I don't normally see like 252 attack EVs on Tingloo. Usually there will be some attack investment, probably calculated so that Tingloo can do enough damage against certain opponents in order to take them down. So you would maybe calculate how many attack EVs you need for a heavy slam to KO a Flutter Maine, and that's how many you would use, and then you would spread out the rest of your EVs across your bulk increasing stats. Again, HP, defense, special defense. And again, that would also be determined on certain attacks you want to live. So you might calculate how much damage Flutter Maine is going to do to Tingloo first. You would put in enough special defense EVs so that it's, you know, a 2-hit or a 3-hit or whatever you're aiming for. And then you would spread the rest out across defense and HP. So let's say Tingloo doesn't terrestrialize. Let's say your opponent has already used its terrestrialization. So Tingloo is weak to water, which means that Palafin could be a very good counter for it, especially because Tingloo is not reducing its attack stat the way it would for a special attacker. So let's say you've got a 252 attack, Adamant, Terra Water, Mystic Water, Palafin. We know that Palafin is faster than Tingloo, so we don't have to use Jet Punch. Instead, we can use Wave Crash. Now, this is how bulky Tingloo is, right? We've got our Palafin in hero form. It's terrestrialized water, it's adamant, it's got 252 attack EVs, it's holding a Mystic Water, it's using Wave Crash, which is a 120 base power move, and even with 0 defense and 0 HP EVs, it is still a guaranteed 2-hit KO from Palafin. And keep in mind that Tingloo runs a lot of water type Terra. If Tingloo were to terrestrialize into the water type, now it's a 3-hit KO with, again, 0 defense investment. So, honestly, what I can tell you is to deal with Tingloo, make sure you don't have anything that's going to be weak to ground or steel, right? Because those are Heavy Slam plus Stomping Tantrum. Those are kind of its big attackers. And you got to have some amount of bulk to deal with Tingloo in return, okay? A Glass Cannon, it's just not going to be able to do enough damage to Oko Tingloo, you know? It's just not going to happen. So let's say I have a Pokemon that I've been using a lot is Dreadnought, actually. Dreadnought has a pretty high attack stat, and you give it Swift Swim, and if you set it up in the rain, it's actually very fast. So let's say we have Choice Banded Dreadnought in the rain with the move Waterfall. Again, let's make it adamant. Let's give it 252 attack. Let's not terrestrialize it, but we'll put it in the rain. Now, in this case, against a 0 defense, 0 HP Tingloo, that is a guaranteed Oko, assuming the Tingloo has not terrestrialized. So, as far as Tingloo goes, slow and steady is going to be a much better way to take down Tingloo than fast and all at once, unless you know that your opponent has already committed their Terra and is unlikely to spring that on you, right? So next up, we have Chiyu, which has a 30% usage percent. Now, Chiyu's ability is going to lower the special defense of all of the Pokemon on the field, which is good because Chiyu is a very strong special attacker, and it usually is going to use moves like Heat Wave and Dark Pulse, sometimes Protect, Overheat, Terra Blast if it's running like a Terra Grass or Terra Water set. You might even see some kind of support-ish sets with Snarl, Nasty Plot to help undo those overheat stat drops. Chiyu's actually fairly diverse in what kind of moves it'll run, except for almost always Heat Wave and Dark Pulse. Typically, it's going to be a little bit difficult to guess what item the Chiyu is going to run because it actually has a pretty good spread across Choice Scarf, Focus Sash, Life Orb, Choice Specs, even Safety Goggles sometimes to deal with Amungus. So it's a little bit difficult to guess what item the Chiyu is going to run, although almost half the time it'll be either Focus Sash or Choice Scarf. And as far as that goes, typically people are running Chiyu a little bit more like a Glass Cannon, 252 special attack, 252 speed, and then either a timid or a modest set. You'll sometimes see more bulky sets meant to live certain hits, but Chiyu is not particularly bulky, so you're not going to see a lot of bulk. Mostly you're just going to have that 252, 252 4 spread. And then how to take down Chiyu, I would say Chiyu is a fire type, so you're looking at, you know, Earthquakes maybe with Great Tusk. You could also go with a close combat from Great Tusk. That's also going to be super effective. Water type Pokemon like Palafin too could be really useful, but do be careful because Chiyu does run Water or Grass Terra, and if it's running Grass Terra, it could Terra Blast your Palafin right back. So make sure that you're considering the possibility that Chiyu Terras into a defensive Terra type when you're targeting it with those super effective moves. And then lastly, we'll talk about Chen Pao. It also has a 30% usage rate, and its ability lowers the defense of all of the other Pokemon on the field, which is great because Chen Pao is a physical attacker. And Chen Pao is even more of a Glass Cannon than Chiyu because its typing, Dark and Ice, makes it 4 times weak to fighting type moves. So when it comes to Chen Pao, you are almost always going to see it running a Focus Sash and 252 attack, 252 speed, probably a Jolly Nature, sometimes Adamant. So it's a lot easier to guess what Chen Pao is going to be doing than some of the other Pokemon that we've discussed here in this video. Terra type will sometimes be either a Dark or an Ice type to boost that damage, but a lot of the time you'll also see it running a Ghost Terra type. This is great because it makes it immune to extreme speed from Arcanine or Dragonite, and it also makes it immune to the fighting type attacks that it was 4 times weak to. So if you're coming up against, let's say, a Great Tusk, you know you're about to eat a close combat, you can Terra Ghost, and you've bought yourself another turn because you're not going to take any damage from that close combat. So because Chen Pao is such a Glass Cannon, so frail, and it typically runs Focus Sash, you're going to see Protect on it most of the time. Also Ice Spinner, Sucker Punch, and then that 4th move is usually Sacred Sword, but sometimes it could be something else like Haze for Dondozos, or let's say Throat Chop for a non-priority Dark type move. So the best way to deal with Chen Pao is going to be priority moves that can hit it before it gets a chance to move, right? I mean, it could also use a priority move in Sucker Punch, but its Sucker Punch is not particularly strong, especially if it's up against, let's say, Flutter Maine. Let's say you have a Flutter Maine against Chen Pao, you Terra Fairy, and now that Sucker Punch is doing hardly anything, and Flutter Maine can probably take it out with a Moonblast or a Dazzling Gleam, and then its partner uses a priority move like Jet Punch, let's say. That would be like a really fantastic position for you as the player in order to take down like an opposing Chen Pao. So that was just me kind of talking off the cuff this time, not scripted, about the top 5 Pokemon in the meta and maybe what I think about them, what they're typically doing, and how you could maybe deal with them and better take them out if you're having trouble with your current teams. So as always, leave a comment down below. Let me know if you disagree with anything I said, if you have anything to add, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to see more like it. I'll see y'all later. Bye!